Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sharita, can you say something else? I think you tried to say hi before and your voice was really low. I want to make sure I'm good.
My voice is really low.
That you got better just now. Whatever you just did.
You're
was-
like,
I think, it's in the morning, so my early morning voice is probably softer.
Okay.
It
All
gets harder throughout the day.
Is 10 o'clock your early morning voice? I would
Well,
say,
it's the fact that the clinic is not open. So I usually spend a lot of this time either like catching up on stuff from the day before or checking my voicemail. Like I'm just not doing, it's not like a lot of energy coming at me. So I talk a lot less. So hmm. Well, you guys are the early birds. We got about 2 minutes. I'm gonna wait a while. I think the last time we checked, we had about 22 registrants. And we have it set up a certain way. I don't know if people just planned on being here at some other time other than 10 o'clock. Um, but
We
we'll
couldn't
get
we
started.
couldn't select a session that we wanted to attend. So
Yeah,
that 20 people could be split across their own
any
time.
time zones. Yep. Any
Mhm.
other time. Period. Yeah. Logistically, we didn't get that information to Keisha in a way that she could set it up that way. But I think this way is going to be better anyway. So Keisha, I see we're at 15. Do you have anybody else waiting in the lobby?
they're trickling in. As soon as they come in, I let them in.
Alrighty.
They're still coming in.
I just didn't want to start if you were actively like letting people in the room.
They're starting to flow a little bit quicker.
Okay, so I see that we're at 20 right now, and I imagine some people added themselves this morning because I hadn't even registered. I added myself this morning, so I'm just in light of time and because we don't want to um like have to go over and we want people to be able to share. I want us to go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Um,
Good morning.
so good morning. Um, am I starting off, Dr. Battle?
Yes.
All right. Good morning, all, and welcome to our 10th policy listening session. I am your chair. You'll hear a little word from me a little bit later on in this process. We did advertise that the meeting format would be these 30-minute intervals of listening session. We think that it could also be fluid. Keisha, are we recording?
Yes, we're recording.
Yes.
So
Okay.
they can go back and look at it later.
Okay. Yeah, you will be able to go back and look at this. This is a public meeting, so It will live on our COC page. So we have the session set up in 30-minute increments. We do have the ability to change that if we don't have any new participants joining in the discussion. We won't start over. We will just continue to flow. And we will do check-ins every 30 minutes to make sure there are no newcomers to the group, so that we know if we can just keep on going or if we need to catch folks up about where we are. During this process, there will be a series of polling questions that will come up shortly. Our hope is to, while we're also listening, to be able to capture some things in writing for our facilitator, that so she will have materials to be able to go back and pull from in conjunction with the video things that she will probably be noting as we go through our listening session and this process. So without further ado, we're gonna go to our next slide. Is Miss Herbert here?
I don't think she's in yet.
Okay, well, I guess I'll take her slide. So we want to just kind of lay out some ground rules and also introduce our facilitator. If Ms. Colleen joins, just let me know and I'll let her take over because I don't know what she had prepared to say in this moment. You guys have already seen the bio that we sent out about Dr. Battle with North Carolina Central University. She is recently did our homeless point in time count, is very interested in homelessness in Durham County and how we as a continuum can do better. We're excited to have her here to dialogue with us today and help us as we develop a tent policy that we feel like is going to speak to the current realities of homelessness and lack of affordable housing in our community. These are some ground rules that we want to embody. We want the listening session to embody, to be curious and listen to understand, show respect and suspend judgment, know any common ground as well as any differences, be authentic and welcome that from others, be purposeful and to the point, and own and guide the conversation. We do want this to be a fruitful conversation that gives us a lot of insights on how we move forward. And without further ado, I will introduce to you all Dr. Battle. Oh.
Yes, thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to be here to participate in this very important project. It is imperative that we all give space to listen. However, what I'd like to do is to start with our chair's message to get us started today.
Good morning, all. I am Sharita McCullers, the Policy and Planning Chair for the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, and I would like to welcome you to our listening session today. As we prepare to listen, share, collaborate, and create, I would like us to be mindful of who we are doing this for. I want us to be grounded in the fact that lives are at stake. Our unhoused numbers are growing in an alarming way. There's a lack of affordable housing and even shelter beds. And that there are those who are outside right now in this cold with no covering. It is important to note that while we strive to have a gold standard for how tents are used in our continuum of care, we also are serving a community that we cannot adequately serve. And that a tent could very well be one of many life-saving and humane interventions we use as we fight for housing justice. So let's move forward with this in mind, while we still strive to get to a better way of serving those who are unhoused, recognizing that the time is now for us to do something, because those we serve are dependent on us to get it right. Let's get to work. Good morning.
Okay, so thank you so much for that message, Ms. McCullers. I am I've recorded a brief message just in case we are reintroducing at the beginning of each segment. So we will move forward with this as well. Good day, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Rachel Battle from North Carolina Central University's Community Engagement Office. I am serving as your facilitator today for the tent policy meeting. As explained by Ms. Herbert and Ms. McCullers, you have received the meeting protocol and guidelines, and I will be here to facilitate the discussion and ensure that everyone is heard and considered throughout this meeting. So as we progress through the next 2 hours, I encourage you to share your concerns or questions. And this is a safe space for you all to express yourselves and engage in discussion. So without further ado, welcome and thank you so much. So next we have a set of polling questions that will be shared by Ms. Keisha. So you should be seeing those pop up in the chat box or as a poll. There will be allocated space for you to respond to those. And I think there's a little typo right there. Please do take the time throughout these sessions to respond to the poll. They are extremely important, and we want to hear what you have to say. There will be time allocated as well as we move forward, and Ms. McCullers will lead us in the next step.
So, you all, I am back. And I just kind of wanted to review with you kind of the timeline I've set us on and a little bit of rationale as to why the timeline looks like this. We were initially given a charge as the Homeless Services Advisory Committee to develop a policy back in October of 2024. And we had not since been able to get anything officially approved and in writing that existed as it related to tents in our continuum. So in an effort to no longer hinder us from moving forward with some viable form of working policy, I have kind of mapped out ideally what I would like to see us happen. What I would like to see happen through the listening session, our work session, and as the month of February progresses. And so your information that you're shared today will be, of course, gathered and synthesized, and some working document will start to evolve in our February the 5th meeting. Dr. Battle is so gracefully giving us time that she's going to try to work on this over the weekend to try to gather some things and start us on the process of drafting. So then on the February 5th, at the February 5th hybrid meeting, we will review the summary and continue working on the draft of the policy. On February the 7th, the plan is to give a brief update on the progress from both the listening session and the working session to the HSAC Executive Committee and their meeting. On February 10th, the hope is to have a draft progress update for a policy and planning meeting during our 10:30 meeting. We will continue to work to finalize the first draft of a community developed tent policy. And then our hope is to present a working document to the full HSAC on Wednesday, February 26th, in preparation for policy adoption. I think this is an ambitious timeline, but I think that historically we have been slow to move to a resolution on some things in the past. And I think the current issue that we have as far as our growing numbers, having a lot of people outside who are not able to access any kind of service from us just because our providers are being inundated. It's just way too many people. I'm hoping that this timeline is realistic and we can be ready to move forward with a plan that the community feels good about on February 26th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so if Miss Keisha will alert us when she shares the poll, that would be great. But what I'd like to do at this point is to, oh, there we go. So the questions are there, the roles of tent in the Durham Continuum of Care system. Are you for or against the tent distribution? What reasons determine your choice? How does tent distribution fit within our continuum?
Dr. Battle, if you can tell me when to stop receiving responses, I'll stop the poll. Just alert me when to stop.
Okay, it will, we can leave it throughout the meeting because we may
Okay,
have
great.
individuals dropping in. So we want to ensure that there is time for everyone to respond.
Okay.
Okay, okay, that was, I'm just gonna jump off of these slides now and stop sharing. All right, so if anyone at this point, we can start discussion. And just to remind you all that this is a listening session and the focus is to listen to hear rather than listen to respond today. So we are hearing, we're taking everything that you are sharing with us, and we're taking everything into consideration. It is extremely important that this is a community effort and that you're seen and heard and factored into the decision making. So please know that the floor is open. Also, it is open for you to start the polling as well. And for anyone who stops in throughout this meeting, they may fill out as well. And we're going to update at every 30-minute section.
And if for some reason you
And
can't see the poll questions, like if they didn't pop up on your screen, if you go down to the bottom of the box and hit the more button, you should be able to click on polls. Shouldn't it show up? It just showed up for me. Maybe
it
let
should
me
just show
close it.
up.
Oh, it didn't show up again.
So when
Is
I hit
anybody
poll,
having any?
when
Is
I hit
anybody?
polls
Go
and
ahead.
questions, it shows up.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yes.
You should be able to hit the polls button at the bottom of the screen to get the poll to drop up. But
What's
this
up?
is a listening session, so we don't want y'all just to write.
Right.
We want y'all to share.
And in that spirit, what we're going to ask for each of you to do, if you could share which organization you represent today, your name, and those of you, if there are multiple individuals from your organization, please identify yourselves. You can take one lead person to introduce the organization. Again, I am fairly new to this process, and I would love to get to meet each of you and get to know you. I have already started in the community to volunteer in some of your programs, and it has been quite enlightening. You know, you never really know the depth and breadth of the work that is the good work that is being done until you immerse yourself in it. And I feel like that is so important as we move forward, not only for our community to our existing community or programs, but for others as well in our community to experience the work that is being done. So you may start and just identify your organization, yourself, and other individuals representing your organization here today. And if you're muted, you may unmute, because I noticed that most of you are muted. And you may raise your
I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see. Got it. So I can read some of these off because I like to.
I can read it out for you if you want me to.
Okay, sure.
So we have Rita McDaniel, North Carolina AIDS Action Network, Sametta Cutler, who is a care navigator with Durham Heart, Nicole Lamb with Volunteers of America, who's the program director for coordinated entry, Sally Wilson with Durham Homeless Care Transitions, Drew Wooten, Open Table. They're really, really coming in. Very fast.
Durham Home
Um,
and Care Transitions,
mhm.
Open Table Ministry.
Jonathan Crooms, Durham County Veteran Services, and HSAC member. Tasha Melvin, Families Moving Forward.
Nicole Beck.
And if someone doesn't know how to start the listening session, you can start with just answering some of the questions that we put forth in the poll. If you don't know, at where to start, but we want to hear your voices on how you, as far as what you think the need is and how we go about executing that need. And I mean, there were a lot of concerns about the policy that has been presented in our last meeting. So the floor is open. Drew?
Yeah, I'm happy to share if that's okay. I mean, I think one of the things we experience in our community is just the significant lack of accessible shelter beds for folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Durham. There's one congregate shelter for individuals. And so for street outreach workers, first responders, it's just incredibly disheartening and dehumanizing to basically essentially say, best of luck. To folks with no really reasonable places to point folks. And so I think tents are not the ideal. Like, I think we should be very clear that we do not want tents as a housing solution for folks. We see this as a short-term gap for more affordable housing and permanent. We are a housing first community, and that is our goal for everyone. But in the meantime, what can we do? And can we see that as an immediate solution? I also think tents are a symptom of a larger community-wide leadership issue in addressing unsheltered homelessness. And so what is going to be done? How are we tracking tents? What are the issues around sanitation? What is the follow-up? Just saying for or against tents is a very short-handed conversation about something that is going to be months, years long conversation and require a ton of engagement and follow-up from multiple stakeholders and providers community wide. And so to say that would be our position on this is yes, they're needed now, and it's much more nuanced than that. And so I would say that to start the conversation. I appreciate everyone being here.
Thank you.
I kind of disagree. My name is Rita McDaniel, and I'm with Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit, and I also work with North Carolina AIDS Action Network. I've heard a lot of community people say when it's in a crucial state that they need to get out of sub-temperature cold weather, that the process is so hard, that you have to go through so much. Your main goal is, I have a family. I need to get them out of the cold. And so that's disheartening when you see that the white flag letters are sent out and it says we can only house 20 people. But that Durham County has much more than 20 people. We have people with mental illness that may not know about the cold weather, the white flag, or know the process to go through. But if we provide tents, yeah, it's a health hazard because a lot of times tent cities are filled with trash because the city doesn't invest in our homeless to say, let's send the DOTs out to pick up the trash so the areas can still look nice. But if I had to choose between a tent and putting my family in to get them out of the cold, I would rather have that option than for me to live with my children in an abandoned house or on a storefront, and us all gathering around to try to stay warm with little or no blankets or any shelter from the weather. It's like I said, I agree with the tenants.
Thank you, Ms. McDaniel.
Hi, my name is David. I'm a peer support specialist working for the Durham Community Safety Department. I'm also a person with lived experience of homelessness. And I can speak from personal experience and echo what Ms. McCullough said earlier, that a tent is a life-saving intervention. When I was out on the streets, there was nights when the only thing that saved me from the wind chill was a thin piece of tent material and some blankets. And no, a tent is not permanent housing. You know, I would love if we had adequate housing for everybody that sought it. The problem is an inventory issue. But it's not fair to say we only want you to eat steak, and so you can't have this sandwich now to someone who is starving. We do what we can when we can, and we try to build more. A tent is a life-saving intervention. It has saved my life. I'm a big believer in the power of stories. And so the other day, when we were out in the community at 8:15 at night, and it was 15 degrees, and we were driving around trying to find people on the streets and take them to shelter, which we ran out of space to be able to do that. And so we began giving out tents. We came to one gentleman who was in downtown, and he's an elderly man with a walker. And we asked him if he knew about the white flag shelters, and he didn't, you know, and we asked him if he wanted to go, and he talked about his incontinence and how that made it difficult for him to be in congregate shelter. And so we went, we got him some supplies, and we came back and we handed him a bag of hygiene supplies and food. And then we gave him a sleeping bag and a tent. And he put his hands down, his face down in his hands, and he began crying. And he said, "You have no idea how much this means to me. I'm going to make it through tonight." That is the impact a tent can have on our neighbors that are living on the streets. It can be the difference between life and death. There are many, many reasons that people are out on the streets, and we need to recognize that everybody's pathway is their own independent journey. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for everybody. I'm going to post in the chat some of the reasons that were given to me recently when we drove around trying to get people into white flag shelter, and they said no, that wasn't an option for them. Because I think it's helpful to understand that, like, when somebody looks me in the face and says, "You know, I can't go to that group shelter. I'm going to fight somebody and get arrested." I believe him. He knows himself. And so if the options we have don't work for him, what does? For some people, independence and autonomy is the most valuable thing. And they're not, most people aren't going to say no if you offer them an apartment. But if we don't have that to give them, how can they maintain their dignity, their respect, and their autonomy? And sometimes a tent is the best solution, or a pallet home, or a keep growing up. But the tent is the cheapest, least we can do. And there's a lot of nuances to this, but I want to frame this discussion that when we talk about tents, we are talking about a life-saving intervention.
Thank you, David.
I would just also say, since we're dealing with like a full capacity of folks where some people can't even get like direct case management or people to reach out with some folks, I think that should be brought forward to this conversation. Sometimes we just don't have the resources available to help folks, and that means a lot of people can go basically unhelped. So the tents, I feel, would actually give us a reason to engage with folks and actually give them that independence on whether they want to engage with services or not. I know I can speak from my experience with having Free Store, where people come once they please and get the things that they need. And if they want to engage, they'll come to office hours the next day. And we always give them like this open-ended, hey, come whenever you can. And please, if you can come, I would love to see you, and we'll help you out with your ID documents. Some people do and some people don't, but it's about giving people back that independence. That's all I really wanted to say.
But we also have to consider those who have mental health issues and drug problems. Those are likely the ones who have been sheltered for so long that they don't like being locked up in a facility where they don't have their freedom. And if you have a problem with mental issues, then that causes another problem within itself.
Thank you, Ms. McDaniel, and thank you, Namia.
It's Namaya.
Sorry.
Namaya.
Namaya, I should know that.
Hey, can I speak 1 second?
Oh, go right ahead.
Hi, yes, my name is Letitia Faison. I'm with Durham Beyond Policing. And I just want to say my dad has lived in a tent for over 30 years on Angie Avenue, and it has been a lifesaver for him. It's not because he has to, I think he has got used to it, but it also started because he couldn't afford to live where he was living at. He was working as a trash dumpster person for L&M for over 15 years, but once they closed down, it was like he had nowhere to go, and he ended up in a tent. So a tent has been saving him for over 30 years now. And it's partially due to what the lady said before. It's disciplines and rules and stuff in the shelter and places where people got to go. And some of those people don't feel like they should be restricted to some of those rules or have to pay to come in some of those areas. So yeah, a tent, it could be a lifesaver for some people.
Ms. Facilitator, we have some hands that have been raised as others are jumping in, so I just want to make sure, Sameta, you get acknowledged. I see your hand has been raised for a while.
Sure, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sameta Cutler. I'm also a peer support specialist with the Durham Community Safety Department HEART team. Like David, I also have lived experience, but the point I want to make is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The foundation is physiological needs, which are water, sleep, food, shelter, clothes, breathing, and homeostasis. So no, these tents are not a solution, but they are providing a form of need for individuals that do not have means to a house. In my opinion, with education, when these tents are given out with education, activities of daily living skills, being able to have it in place where the encampment or when we give out the tents to people that they can be educated and we can provide ongoing support, it basically could work. Just like I believe it, I forgot her name, I'm sorry, but she talked about going into the shelter system. If I'm a woman and I have 6 children, ages from 9 to 18, my 18 may still be in school. I'm still responsible for him. I do not want to separate my family to go into a shelter. I shouldn't be punished because I had 5 children and my child is 18 and he's too old to go into a shelter. I'm originally from New York, and so I was unhoused in New York, but it was by choice because I was on drugs at the time, and I would rather do drugs than go right around the corner to my house, a 4-bedroom house with my parents and my children. I'd rather stay out there in the street and do drugs. In New York, it's many places to hide when you're unsheltered because they have many abandoned buildings, many places to find shelter. Down here, it's different. So I'm definitely for, tent distribution, and we have to realize that no one can improve their quality of life if their basic needs aren't met. That tent could be the stepping stone or the step up for them to say, you know, these people gave me a tent. Maybe I can take another step. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cutler. We are at the 10:32 mark. I see Chris's hands up. And I apologize earlier, there was a bar across here that I didn't hit an okay, so it was blocking out those hands. So now I see, thank you, Mr. Henderson, for that. Let's, at this point, just reorient ourselves, and Chris, you are next. If we can just check Miss McCullers, if we have new attendees that signed in after our original start time, so that we can regroup here at this 30-minute point.
Okay. So we went very quickly from like 20 to 50, and I don't know when those persons entered the room.
Okay.
Just logistically, we had planned on starting the listening sessions over every 30 minutes.
Yes, let's do
If there's anybody who feels like they want us to go back and revisit the ground rules and the like in the format, we can do so at this time, or we can continue the discussion. Totally up to you guys. Anybody want us to start over?
I see Amanda's hand up as well. Amanda, if that is in response to Ms. McCullers' question, you may proceed. If not, I do have an orienting point to make.
Question came up on whether or not it's okay to remain in multiple sessions, and it is absolutely okay to remain for the entire time.
Okay, thank you so much. What I'm going to do at this point is just to reorient us. And as we respond, I just want to ensure that you are responding from your experiences that you've had, not necessarily responding in response to someone else. It causes an energy shift. And I want to make sure that we are linear and ensuring that it's an open space and it's a welcoming space, and that we continue on this path. I love the way this is going. Thank you all so much for all your contributions. And for those who came in after, we're just going to do a quick share of 1 second. Actually, for orienting video.
Good morning, all. I am Sharita McCullers, the Policy and Planning Chair for the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, and I would like to welcome you to our listening session today. As we prepare to listen, share, collaborate, and create, I would like us to be mindful of who we are doing this for. I want us to be grounded in the fact that lives are at stake. Our unhoused numbers are growing in an alarming way. There is a lack of affordable housing and even shelter beds. And that there are those who are outside right now in this cold with no covering. It is important to note that while we strive to have a gold standard for how tents are used in our continuum of care, we also are serving a community that we cannot adequately serve. And that a tent could very well be one of many life-saving and humane interventions we use as we fight for housing justice. So let's move forward with this in mind, while we still strive to get to a better way of serving those who are unhoused, recognizing that the time is now for us to do something, because those we serve are dependent on us to get it right. Let's get to work. Good morning, all. I am Sharita McCullers, the Policy and Planning Chair for the.
Thank you all so much. I have here Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Noblet. I am with the North Carolina chapter of the National Union of the Homeless. I wanted to start off today with a statement written from Dean Rocky Eberly. He is here on the call today. He is an unhoused person in Durham, and wanted to share this with everybody here. So here it goes. Tents for the homeless provide temporary basic shelter from the weather. Staying dry in a tent lowers chances of illnesses from hypothermia. Tents contribute to a sense of security and privacy. A place to store and change clothing. I live in a tent until a more permanent solution is found. I'm being treated for mental health. Before I moved into a tent, my anxiety was overwhelming. I worried all day about where I would sleep and lost sleep from insecurity. Rainy weather was the worst. Sleep deprivation with no place to take a nap during daytime. Now that I have my own tent in a safe place, my anxiety and depression levels improved greatly. I can honestly say that my life has been saved by having a tent to live in. I really appreciate you, Rocky, for sharing that with everybody. My own comments aside from that, you know, we're in a time where homelessness is on the rise everywhere in the country. Kind of the model that HUD has set out to help us end homelessness has kind of been proven that to be a failure. So I think it's pretty reasonable to say that we need to accept and protect tents until poverty is actually addressed on a state and federal level, because that's the only thing that's going to get us out of this situation. And on that point, like, we need to be thinking about this more on just a distribution level. We also need to we need to full stop say no camping or sleeping bans in Durham. Like 100%. Ever since the Supreme Court passed the Grants Pass, or upheld the Grants Pass ruling, which allowed governments to pass laws that basically make it illegal to be homeless. If you can't stand, sleep, walk, sit, be homeless in public space, that's a Jim Crow law. It makes you so you can't exist. So whatever policy that we put forward needs to specifically say that this body does not recommend, fully vehemently opposes any sort of camping ban, as it would increase the already violent conditions that homeless folks experience today. It would go counter against the continuum of care's goal of ending homelessness. It would be all around bad. So that is my comment. Thank you, Rocky, again for sharing for your story. Thank you.
Thank you both, Rocky and Mr. Noblet. We have Amanda with her hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Amanda Wallace, and I'm the founder of an organization here in Durham called Operation Stop CPS. And, unfortunately, our organization has had to deal with families who have been impacted by this crisis here in Durham. And I got a chance to look at the policy once it was put in the chat. And what it screams to me is a surveillance and policing policy for those who are unhoused in Durham. And like to ground in your first question about if I'm for or against tents, I mean, of course I am for something that someone needs. I think the bigger issue is, why do they need it in a community where there are resources? And respectfully, of course, I think that the reason why we are having this problem is because we put so much money into solving the problem with these initiatives. And, I'm sure, again, with these initiatives, instead of, again, solving the root of this problem. And so, like, in the policy, it addresses encampments. And it puts this like word on this encampment, but reality, it is communities of people who are unhoused that are coming together to like be together. And of course, if you are in a community, there, like I saw it in the policy, it talked about like waste and that being the issue. Like somebody else said, well, go pick it up and go commit to the people that, you know, that are outside. And my alarm goes off when I see it say that Department of Social Services is a party to this policy. And it says if needed, they would be contacted. It tells me that the people on this team would then become mandated reporters if children are seen outside in these communities, and that they would then be reported to the Department of Social Services. And then people would have their children taken away, and the department would then pay other people to take care of their children instead of giving them the housing. And so again, if we are really talking about what we're going to do, I think we have to be really clear on what role this policy is going to put on human beings to, again, surveil and police people. So I just hope that you guys are listening to the impact of this, and that, yes, we can put words on a piece of paper, but what impact is it going to have on real people? Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Dr. Battle.
Yes.
So I just wanted to stop just for a second. And I need just to reiterate, we have been trying to answer questions in the chat. We have posted the guidance that we currently have. There was a post of the, not made by myself, Colleen, or Keisha, of the policy that was presented in one of our recent meetings. That is not an actual policy. It is, and so I want us to not get thrown off by attacking that policy, because the purpose of these listening sessions and our current plan is to develop a responsive, realistic policy for Durham now. So we don't want to spend our time on that. I'm sorry, I just needed to intervene right here because I didn't want us to go down a rabbit hole of arguing a policy that is not official. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. Natalie and Amanda, if you can, I'm going in order here. So, okay, thank you.
First, I just want to thank you, Dr. Battle, and for Sharita for hosting this. I know that the policy that was shared is not an official policy, but I agree with Elizabeth or Betsy from Durham Beyond Policing that I would hope the question is not if we are going to offer tents or provide basic protections for those who need it. I really like how Sameta framed it as needs. And as I'm a clinician who is working with neighbors in the community with severe persistent mental illness and cannot always enter into congregate settings. The other day he was told he was in a tent that he had to move it. And so I saw him dragging the tent down the street with all of his possessions in it. It did trigger some sort of psychotic response. And the end result of that was him dragging it back to the spot he was already at. I know there is an encampment policy, so I would like to just say that not only do I feel like there should be tents to offer and acknowledge someone's intrinsic value to offer protection, but also where are people supposed to put the tent? So I hope that any policy that is put in place does somehow mention a sanctioned place where people can safely put tents or stay and not be hassled. I know Long Meadow Park is kind of a hot spot. People will go in and clear that out with police, and then days later the tent pops back up. So I would hope that any policy includes that. And I also just want to say that this whole idea of tents keep people from entering into housing. When we talk about a continuum is not black or white thinking. It is not this side or that side. It means there's a range of solutions, there's a range of response we can give to our neighbors that will serve them in that moment. I'm a social worker, so we're meeting them where they're at in that moment as they continue to assess and determine their own goals. I know we all have an idea of what we want for people, but if the effort is going to be based on what we want, I don't think that's going to serve the community well. So I really hope we can have provide this basic need to people, and I hope we can do it in a way where they're able to utilize that in a way that is helpful for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thomas?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thomas Carl Britton. I'm with Change Pass, a mutual aid org that does distro in East Durham, particularly at Longmeadow Park, at least once a week on Sundays. I'm also an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So, like I mentioned, I am a part of a group that does distro in East Durham at least once a week. And I think while we're talking about the tenting policy, definitely echoing everything everybody has said, but I think not even a thing. I have a large concern about what happens after tents, right? Like we do have an encampment policy. And if we're continually sweeping these tents without like a very well coordinated response, not only are we harming people, but we're just costing the city more. It costs us less to leave people alone than to sweep. And the mayor has the ability to stop the sweeps. He has the power to tell the police department not to do that. There are multiple cities across the country that are winning lawsuits right now because police sweepings are inherently a constitutional violation of illegal seizure of property. And then also looking at the proposed policy, I really want to echo just like the part 4, the policy section of it, right? Like the tents must be marked with distributing agencies. The agency distributing the tenor is responsible for cleanup. It seems like we're just putting a lot of policing on people that are supposed to take care of others. And I understand that this is a draft policy, but right now where this draft policy stands, it's going to do more harm than good. We need to be able to give people tents and stop removing them. If we're wanting to do any kind of renovations or renewal, what have you, I call it the early start of gentrification in most situations where we do need to remove tents, like in Longmeadow Park. There needs to be a plan in place before removal to actually safely take care of people and not take their stuff. Again, it's costing the city a lot more money than needed just on labor cost alone for police. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. And I think this policy is kind of just reinforcing that. Again, I understand it's a draft policy, but where it stands right now is not helping the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Leah?
Hi, y'all. I'm here from the Durham Community Safety Department. I wanted to speak about some of the reasons I've heard for why we should not distribute tents. The top 3 things that I hear the most often are that it's negatively impacting businesses, especially downtown businesses, that it's a public health issue, and that it increases crime. For the businesses, I think that it's true. Tents increase the visibility of homelessness, and it is making people uncomfortable. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that for a long time, homelessness has been very invisible. And the fact that tents can make it more visible is a call to action for all of us in the community to do more to make sure our neighbors have safe, dignified places to be. For around public health, yes, there are public health challenges of living outside. And I think that the city has done some interesting things to support unsheltered neighbors, like the solid waste pilot that allows for trash and recycling pickup for some encampments, and partnership with the Harm Reduction Coalition to do regular sweeps to make sure there aren't syringes around or needle litter that could cause unexpected harm. And so we have a reputation of doing good things. We are the city of medicine. We can address the public health issue, not by sweeping, but by better equipping neighbors to keep a safe encampment that will keep both them and everyone around them safe and healthy. I also, around the crime, I would say there's a lack of data to support this, and I hear a lot of anecdotes being spread around, and that most of those crimes are crimes of poverty. And so the root causes of that is definitely not jail. And so in general, any long-term behavioral health challenges, I would say just they're not solved by jail. Jail is not shelter. It's not a solution for addressing the root causes of what's going on. My grandfather was unhoused. He was arrested and ended up passing away in jail when my dad was a kid. And the repercussions of criminalizing homelessness they're generational. Like when we make those mistakes now, they're not just impacting the people who are directly here now, they're impacting everyone in those folks' families. I would also say just a note about the sweeping and removing of campsites. If our goal is to reduce crime, if our goal is to make sure people have their needs met, sweeping a campsite kind of gets rid of such an anchor point of stability that allows a neighbor to connect to long-term services. And so I know firsthand when we try to go support somebody and their tent has been swept, it might take us 3 more months to locate that person and rebuild that rapport and reestablish some of those basic needs. When folks have that, even a semblance of a place to call home and build that stability, it's so much more possible to envision what additional stability could look like in permanent housing in so many different ways. Finally, just a note about the sanctioned spaces. I know it's been mentioned that it might be helpful to have designated spaces where it is legal for someone to live in a tent. And I think that there are a lot of those policies that can inadvertently criminalize homelessness in a different way. So I just wanted to kind of lift it up. I know we're revising our encampment response policy right now, and that even if we are able to designate spaces for encampments, that we don't have the consequence of criminalizing folks who choose to camp in an undesignated space.
Thank you, Leah. Dorothy? You're muted. Dorothy, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. The tents are a result of the government partially abandoning their legal obligation to ensure they are protecting the welfare and interests of their citizens by making sure every citizen is housed and is not in a code. It is the government responsibility and legal obligation to make sure there is a safe placement for its citizen. It is their legal duty to make sure there are available placements for their citizens. Whether they do this by requesting emergency funding from DC or public cry to our local officials to meet this crisis. It is their legal duty to do so. To meet their citizens' need, they are obligated to do so. With that said, I believe it is a form of trespass and illegal for unauthorized parties to set up their tent and live on private premises or business property without authorization. I do believe we should authorize designated areas for tents to be set up and used. We currently do not have access to buildings to make shelter available for our citizens. I have a few ideas that I will be sharing in the HSAC meeting next month on how to address this crisis of making housing available. I also can provide these suggestions here at this meeting if you'd like me to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. You may go ahead and share that in the poll as a response. I'm sure it will be very helpful.
Can you just remind them about accessing the poll?
Yes, the poll. So at the bottom, you'll see polls and quizzes. Just click on that and it will pop up and give you an option to insert your comments. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. So please raise your hand. And within 4 minutes or so, we're going to reorient ourselves again and continue discussion. Mary?
Good Good morning. My name is Mary Molina. I just wanted to say this has been very informative. There are a lot of points that I had never considered about homelessness and about tents, and I'm very grateful to the people who have responded. I have a couple of questions, and I know that this is supposed to be listening, but one is it possible that we could answer the poll via email rather than in the comments section? That's one. The other point I wanted to make is rather than having tents seemingly be a solution, it looks to me as if tents should be in conjunction with X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z to be determined. I'm not opposed to the idea of tents. I'm opposed to the idea of tents being a solution. And I'm opposed to the idea of tents being a solution only for cold weather under white flag conditions or hot weather under similar conditions when the temperature is above 95. I think that our homeless and unsheltered population needs shelter year round. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Miss McCullers should be able to provide you with an email and further instructions on submission via email.
Dr. Battle, I do want to make clear that the poll isn't being answered in the comments. It is a separate anonymous poll that you can click and answer the questions on your screen while you listen to the meeting. So it is not intended, Mary, to be answered through the comments, but you should be able to access it separately. And we can still send it to you via email if you want.
And if you look across the bottom of your screen where it says polls and quizzes, I did notice earlier some responses in the comments. The comment section is open. However, the poll is where it needs to be submitted. Thank you so much, Mr. Henderson. Okay, Mary, your hand is still up. Next is sure. I would like to, at this point, I attended a meeting of individuals who have had lived experience, and it was quite eye-opening experience. It was a humbling experience, and I also learned more about individuals who, based on the data, we have lost those who have been homeless and passed away. And I'd like to, at this time at 10:59, if we can have a moment of silence for those individuals. And we will resume at 11.
I have a list of names that were given at the Durham Homeless Vigil in this past December, if you would like for me to read those names off.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. McDaniel.
Okay. And these names are from this past year.
Thank you.
Adam Kinsley, Alan Crawl, Antonio Harper, Arthur Pescasey, Ashley Burris, Calvin Latrice Moore, Shaquilla Mitchell Little, Clarence Voigt Jr., Dabney Tyree, Dennis Kenner, Danny Fasucci, Daryl Fulton, David Bryant, Gary McCrae, Jeremy Mullins, Jerry Armstrong, John Massenberg, Joseph Frank Timms, Larry Sims, Leo Welsh, LaShawn Denise Watkins, Marvin Bennett, Michael Johnson, Michael Phillips, Miguel Morales Gonzalez, Misty Hayes, Amelia Bowens, Rebecca Burke, Robert Melvin Durham, Robert S. McAllister, Roy Bus Stop Shealy, Roy Winfield, Scotty Jones, Thomas Holloway, Thomas Lee Edwards, Timothy Wright, Wayne Wright, Tommy L. Jr. Harris, Vincent S. Hill, and I apologize for mispronouncing anyone's name.
Amazing grace. See the sound. That change.
As we continue with our reflections and sharing, I'd like to reorient us to our next 30-minute segment.
Homeless Services Advisory Committee. Good morning, all. I am Sharita McCullers, the Policy and Planning Chair for the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, and I would like to welcome you to our listening session today. As we prepare to listen, share, collaborate, and create, I would like us to be mindful of who we are doing this for. I want us to be grounded in the fact that lives are at stake. Our unhoused numbers are growing in an alarming way. There is a lack of affordable housing and even shelter beds. And that there are those who are outside right now in this cold with no covering. It is important to note that while we strive to have a gold standard for how tents are used in our continuum of care, we also are serving a community that we cannot adequately serve. And that a tent could very well be one of many life-saving and humane interventions we use as we fight for housing justice. So let's move forward with this in mind, while we still strive to get to a better way of serving those who are unhoused, recognizing that the time is now for us to do something, because those we serve are dependent on us to get it right. Let's get to work. Good morning, all.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McDaniel. Any other questions, any other comments? Again, we are listening to hear you, not necessarily listening to respond today. It's important that you use this platform to inform those that are creating policies. Too often, we don't put that face and name as human beings who are out there suffering. And I really would like for you to consider all that is being done in our community, and to even look at visiting each other's programs and see what is being done, so that we can continue to serve and do so from a place of collaborative efforts, and ensure that we are a cohesive group across the city of Durham. There's wonderful work that's being done. I look forward to visiting each of your programs, and hearing as well directly from you. However, today is the day that we really share anything that's in your heart, experiences that you may have had, that can impact the trajectory of this policy. And silence is okay. It's okay for now, and then we can pick up when you're ready, okay? Yes, David.
Hi. I think it's very important that we don't infantilize people that are experiencing homelessness. I believe that each individual is the world's foremost expert on what they need to survive, and that we do our best work when we're not telling them what to do, but we're asking people what they need and trying to build our supports around that. I don't support any policy that makes tents a reward for compliance. If it is a life-saving intervention, it should not be withheld under any circumstances. That being said, I am a believer that we need sanctioned space for people to be able to set up and live in their tents. As someone has said before, it's so much more than just an encampment. It's a community. It is a space where love happens, where people sleep and eat and grow and survive and hopefully get to the place where they can thrive. I also don't believe that a sanctioned encampment space should be mandated for somebody to receive a tent, but I do believe that it should be available. And I am asking that the people in this space put out a call to our city government to look into the creation of sanctioned encampment space. I have a proposal for what that could look like that I'll put into the chat. Space that includes access to restrooms and showers on a bus line with transportation to food, access to supportive services, but not a requirement for participation in those, that uplifts the residents of that community by paying the residents who live there to care for their own community, rather than taking outsiders and putting them over top of the community, directing how they should live, and providing supports when necessary. As a member of the Durham Community Safety Department, this is what we do. This is what we love to do. And we are available to respond to the needs of the community without imposing punitive actions or a belief that people should comply with certain directives, but rather empower people to try to live their best lives in the way that they see fit. And no, that's not good enough. A tent is not good enough. What's good enough is independent, safe, and stable housing. But while we lack that, we need to try to do everything we can and have a more comprehensive system that offers more alternatives to people, respecting what their needs are. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Stephen? You're muted, Stephen. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Stephen Kersey, peer support specialist with Durham Community Safety Department. And right now, I'm probably going to speak out of some real frustration. I'm kind of ashamed to be a part of a group of organizations that even have to have this conversation. I think that the need or necessity for tent distribution has been clearly identified. And I think that we should, at this point, be having a very different conversation. To even have to consider a policy and why we should not distribute, just a simple life-saving measure when we don't have any other resources to offer anybody, is kind of disheartening to me. I think we should be having conversations about identified spaces that we've already looked at and want to set up for individuals until they can reach some semblance of permanent supportive housing or whatever their need may be. But to be having this conversation and not even have anything drafted or in place, an actual policy. We have an encampment policy, but we don't have places where people can actually establish encampments. That's been identified. I mean, it's kind of just running people around the same system that they've been running through for years, and we haven't clearly identified anything. So I'm speaking out of a place of frustration right now at this point, because, when I have to go and approach an individual and ask them, can they move to what's been called a less conspicuous spot, but nobody's identified that spot, and they ask me, well, where can I go? And I have to tell them, I don't know. That's probably one of the worst feelings that I've had since I've been doing this. I'm trying to offer you a resource, but I don't even have, or I haven't identified what that resource is. So I think we should be having a very different conversation at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Namaya?
I would just like to echo my friends David Prater and also Stephen. I think it's well said that we shouldn't really be, on David Prater's point, we shouldn't be like dangling something in front of people's faces and saying, hey, if you would like to access a tent of all things, you need to sign up for case management or community engagement. Sometimes people just want to be left alone. I think I have learned that, and a lot of other people can also echo that feeling that some people just want to be left alone. And some people also want that independence to decide when it's time for them to approach their housing journey. You cannot force a housing journey. You can't just tell someone, hey, if you get this tent, I'm going to make you, like, you need to be able to come. There have been multiple times where I've given out resources and I have basically invited the opportunity to come and see me the next day, and they don't. But what also happens is when you build that trust and you build that sense of security with that person by giving them something that they need, they realize, hey, I can also go to this person for other things and see what's on the table for me. The thought of just basically being like, well, if you want a tent, you're just going to have to go and engage with these resources, just kind of seems a little counterproductive, in my opinion. And I also think the sanctioned encampments, of course, that is definitely another conversation to be had. I, as much I, especially living in the downtown area, have a lot of like experiencing a lot of people set up their tents wherever. And personally, I believe that, you know, you should, especially if there's a place that you feel safe, please be safe there. However, of course, neighboring communities and neighboring businesses do not appreciate that. And it's really heartbreaking to be like, hey, you can't sleep here, and also have to like tell them like, I don't have a solution for you, but you just can't sleep here. Then there's the question of, okay, well, if I can't sleep here, I can't sleep outside, fine, let me go to a shelter. We only have one shelter that we're currently connected to, kind of like available, at least for individuals, and then there's a family shelter. And then the other one is another shelter that isn't connected to us and has their own policies and own rules and regulations. And those are the only options that you have available, and they're all full. And you have to tell somebody, I'm sorry, I just, there's nothing I can do for you, and just kind of hope and pray that you see them tomorrow, which can be very hard just emotionally. I'm also a person who has lived experience. My lived experience comes from being a child, and you know, going along with where my family, and I just know how it is, like not knowing where you're going to sleep the next night, and that can just like affect your mental health and where you're going to like basically reside at night. So I just want to also just say that that's my experience of being out in the field, at least. I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Open Table, and I'm a case manager. Well, I'm a case manager at OTM. Sorry.
Thank you, Namaya. We're
Can
open.
I apologize, my hand isn't raised. But can I ask a question? Could someone explain to me how much sense does it make to bring homeless in out of the cold at night, but then put them out at 7 o'clock in the morning when there are no businesses open? It's still below 32 degrees and they have nowhere to go. What is the purpose of, and I know it may be a policy thing, a business type thing, but if it's still below 32 degrees, why aren't they allowed to stay inside the shelter until it warms up to be at least 35, 40 degrees, or when businesses are open?
Ms. McDaniel, you have made a very important point, and I think it's extremely important to consider as we consider policy. I think we're not able to give you a response to that today. However, I can see it being an integral part of the considerations for establishing a policy.
Thank you.
However, to Ms. McDaniel's point, I will point out that a person with a tent is at least able to stay in it all day. That being said, yes, we need day shelter desperately. And a proposal was put forward by Urban Ministries last year. And I hope that movement is put forward to create ample day space for people to make it out of homelessness. They need more than just a bed.
Thank you, David. Ms. Rita?
Is the Nehemiah Church on Mangum Street not used? Because I know a couple of years ago it was used as a day shelter for the winter time and for the summertime. So is the city still not utilizing them, or is the church no longer accepting homeless people to come there during the day? I know with Triangle Empowerment Center, we used to go there and feed the homeless that came there during the day, but so I was just wondering what happened to that option that was once had.
Sorry.
Ms.
Go ahead, Maya.
McCullers or Mr. Henderson, or anyone can answer that question?
I and don't I might have this a little bit wrong, but there was some funding, some city or county funding that allowed for the space at Nehemiah, and I want to say that that funding discontinued.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the libraries are being utilized as kind of just like warming centers right now. So that's the only one I know, and that's the only place that I kind of redirect them. I know also Urban Ministries at some point had a warming center for the really, really cold nights. I think when it was like 12 or 14 degrees during the morning. So that's all I have to offer for that, Miss.
Thank you.
So let me just add some insight, because Leah just reminded me why Nehemiah had that contract, and it was during the time that our main library downtown was closed for them to build it anew, and so they wanted to have a place where people could go, because we often in our city use the library as warming and cooling spaces for people who are outside. And so that was funded for the duration of the time that the library was closed. And once the library opened up, that funding stopped for Nehemiah.
Thank you for that
Thank
information.
you. We have two hands up. Jeffrey, you're muted.
Yes, ma'am. I'm coming in right now. Again, I'm Jeffrey Rollins, work with the city. I'm the coordinator administrator for the city. And by way of full disclosure, I also am previously homeless myself. I'm dropping some information in the chat because we're having some discussions that I've had in other areas. When I came to Durham, I had covered Johnston, Lee, Harnett, Anson, Randolph, Richmond, Moore, Montgomery, and Hope counties. And I also currently live in Wake. So we're having discussions about tents, and it's a little troubling to me because the information that I dropped shows that tents are a nice stopgap, but there are better solutions. 700 people die yearly from hypothermia in tents. Empowerment jackets, no person has ever died wearing an empowerment jacket. It's like we're having a discussion about the most minor intervention. If we're talking about cake, this is a slice. And there are other interventions that are better solutions. They're not as visible, and they're not going to get as much politic or as much glamour as these things are getting. But there are much better solutions than what we're talking about right now. This is a good starting point. This is not a good place to land. I'm kind of struggling a bit because I think that we should be having a greater discussion. And Dr. Battle, I applaud you for moderating this discussion. But I hope that this is the beginning of a greater discussion. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Someone else had that. Sheldon?
Hello, so I'm Sheldon Mitchell with Urban Ministries of Durham. I was just going to add just a little bit of clarity to some of the questions around folks having to leave out in the mornings. I know one of the things that we've done this current winter is really starting to allow our overflow white flag guests really to stay in at least until the breakfast time. And then after breakfast is typically on those colder days is when the cafe opens up to allow people to be able to come inside. So that provides a little bit of a buffer, whereas people did at one point have to leave out at 8. But on those colder days and mornings, folks are allowed to stay in until breakfast and then transition there. And then the cafe typically opens after breakfast around 10 for folks as a cold weather station or a warming station.
Thank you, Sheldon. Sorry, I cut that off before. In 4 minutes, we will transition into our final segment.
I put it in the chat, but I'm going to verbally say it as well. I think it's worth noting that when we name libraries as our warming centers, we need to acknowledge they're not open on Sundays. And it gets cold on Sunday too. We need more.
Thank you,
This is
David. Yes,
this
Chris.
is, hey, this is Chris Noblet, again from the North Carolina chapter of the National Union of the Homeless. I just want to underscore that, you know, however this policy shakes out, that an important foregrounding in it, but putting it into the record of the policy itself, should lay out the fact that daily 800 people die in the US from poverty every day. 800 people, the fourth leading cause of death in the richest country in human history. And I think that itself gives a lot of reasoning, a lot of justification for having stopgap measures like tents, when we know that the real solution to these problems we're having is to meet our basic human needs like shelter, like food, when we know we have enough of all of this in the richest country in human history. So yeah, just want to underscore that that is an important part of this policy that should be a part of it. I didn't see that addressed in the draft policy.
Thank you, Chris. In a minute, we will transition to our final segment. So as we move into our final session, I would like to invite you to reflect on your role in whatever organization you serve in. Know that your work is meaningful and it's impactful. I'm sure most or all of you know this to a certain extent. However, I know there are times where you may not feel heard or seen, or, like you're screaming in the wilderness. Know that there are other individuals that are committed to supporting your initiatives and ensuring that your voices are heard. And though maybe sitting in a meeting like this may feel somehow futile, like you're spinning your wheels, I encourage you to, I thank you for being here, first of all. Second of all, know that we are committed to ensuring that we hear you and we ensure that your voices are not translated, but carried into the conversation based on your personal experiences, your lived experiences in your various roles. Many of you serve voluntarily. Many of you are in the job that's actually not a job because it's so fulfilling that you would do it whether or not you were getting compensated. So thank you so much for inviting me as a part of your community. And I will assure you that I am committed to ensuring that I serve alongside you as well, and do my little bit um, within this community, and know that I am a part of this community now. And I look forward to learning all about your programs and being involved in it. So I thank you, and I invite you in the next 15 minutes or so, just for a brief reflection before you hop off and go back to work, because it's important that you carry so much, and self-care is often put on the back burner. So just make sure that you're taking care of yourselves as well as you're out here advocating for those who are often nameless and faceless in our community. And we're all here to give voice and heart to the challenges that are being endured by those we don't see at night when we are in our beds sleeping. So thank you all again. And please do think about anything that you may think or may not think is important in terms of sharing, that can potentially impact this policy. I hear you. I affirm you have all valid points, and I really want to ensure that, and I thank you again for being here, but I want to also ensure that whenever we invite you, it's not just to check a box. It's to ensure that we translate the stories that are happening day after day that is not seen by those that are making policies and creating policies. So it's important that we're all out there alongside you to ensure that we are also learning as a facilitator, as a chair, as a director, as government officials. And I think one of the most important things is, to ensure that those who are not able to see, it is our responsibility to make them see and make them feel what's really happening out here. So again, thank you. I see Chris. Chris is still up, or do you have your hands up, Chris?
No, that
Oh,
was left over.
okay. All right. So thank you again. I'll give you a moment to reflect, and then we'll circle back in a minute. So before you all jump off, I would like to just take this moment to share a brief reflection. And one of the things that I do is I teach trauma-informed practices is really to encourage individuals to create a self-care plan. But for today, just start with a brief meditation that you can do anywhere. And let me quickly share this. And if you could indulge me for a second and just close your eyes wherever you are.
For gifting yourself these next few minutes, it's important to remember that you're a priority, and allowing yourself even just a few short minutes of intentional reflection can really have a positive impact on the rest of your day. So let's use these next few minutes to come back to center and set an intention for the rest of your day. Move into a comfortable position, whether you're seated at your desk at work or laying on the couch at home, and gently close your eyes and shift all of your attention onto your breathing, taking slower, deeper breaths than you've taken all day so far. Taking a deep breath in through your nose and slowly letting it out through your mouth. And continuing to breathe that way, feeling your lungs expand out as you inhale and contract back in as you exhale. Tune into your body, noticing how it feels. Noticing if there's anything that it's trying to tell you. Notice any place of tension or tightness in your body. And give those areas permission to relax, sending love into those areas. Thank your body for taking such good care of you, and let it know that it's okay to rest and relax for these next few minutes. You may notice that your mind starts to wander off. That's okay. That's natural. Just notice it and bring your attention back to your body, using your breath as your anchor. Try to picture one thing that's happened today that's made you smile, or made you thankful or appreciative. And just let that feeling fill you up for a moment. Breathe that feeling in from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And allow yourself to smile if that feels natural. Now focus on something that you can do today, whether it's for yourself or for someone else, that will allow you to continue feeling this way. It could be something as small as deciding to go to bed early tonight so that you have time to finally read that book that's been on your bedside table, or the joy of getting dinner with a close friend. What's one little thing you can plan for your day to bring that intentional joy to it? Now just focus on that for a few minutes. Sit in that feeling of joy and peace. Now let's take a few more deep breaths together. A deep breath in, feeling your lungs expand out as you inhale, and everything contract back in as you exhale. Again, an even deeper breath than the one before it. Holding that breath for a beat and exhaling everything out. Last time, your deepest breath yet, sending that breath through your entire body. And exhale it out. And in your own time, slowly bring your awareness back to where you are. And thank yourself for taking these few minutes to just be intentional and kind to yourself. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and enjoy the rest of your day.
Find my screen. Well, thank you so much. We have 15 minutes or so. What we can do is just review again to ensure that you are clear on the reporting protocol following this meeting. On February 5th, we intend to synthesize information gathered from this listening session today, compiling everything that you have shared in preparation for our working meeting on February 5th. We will review the summary and continue the working draft of the policy. On February 7th, a brief update on progress from both meetings presented to HSAC Executive Committee. On February 10th, we'll draft progress update during policy and planning meeting, and continued work to finalize the first draft of the community developed tent policy. Coming out of this today, February 26th, presentation of the working document at the full HSAC meeting on Wednesday, February 26th, in preparation for the policy adoption. Okay, so if anyone must leave, please feel free to do so. If you'd like to stay behind and think about other things that you'd like to share, please feel free to do that as well. And if you just want to stay and sit and meditate, that is fine as well. Ms. McCullers?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any closing remarks?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My audio was doing something weird, so I didn't know if you could hear me. I just want to thank everybody for coming and sharing. This turnout was what I hoped for, but I didn't know if that we would get the robust numbers and the amount of feedback that we did. We will be moving forward and trying to meet the timeline. Can we show the timeline just again?
Sure.
So this is in case, well, because we didn't go back through the entire presentation at every 30-minute mark. So I just want to just make sure people kind of know. So this is my hope for the timeline on this work. We want to develop a draft policy by February 26th. I think that we have allowed this to go, the lack of a policy to go on for a long time. And I don't think that was representative of the heart that we all have for the folks that we serve. And so in our February 5th meeting, we hope to start embarking on a working session to prepare that draft, sharing some information with you that our facilitator goes back and works on, to get us to a working draft policy. And then on February 7th, I plan on giving an update to the executive committee of the HSAC, and then a follow-up draft progress update at the February 10th Policy and Planning meeting. Our hope is to continue working to finalize that first draft and to be ready for a presentation to HSAC on February 26th, and we'll see how things go. My hope is that by the beginning of March, we have a policy that we can be proud of and that we um, I've been listening to the comments and I'm hearing the outcry for some additional things. And so stay tuned. Come to our policy and planning meeting on February the 10th. And some of those issues and matters that I've heard voiced today will come up on our agenda. A lot of work happens in policy and planning. Ideally, this kind of response that we had in the listening session is always been my hope for our policy and planning meeting so we can make sure that our policies reflect our community voice. Thank you guys for participating today, and I look forward to seeing you on the 5th, possibly seeing you on the 7th and the 10th, and definitely on the 26th. Take care.
And we'll keep the meeting open until noon, as indicated on the agenda. Feel free to leave if you need to, or just stay and meditate.
And just remember, if you haven't had an opportunity to do so, the poll is still open for you to put in responses. You would access that poll by going down to the bottom of your screen and clicking on polls and quizzes, and the poll should pop up. We will be using those written responses to help us in developing that draft. Thank you so much.
I would also like to add that we are aware that that poll has limited space. So for those who ask to submit via email, please do reach out to Mr. McCullers, and she's going to provide you the information that you need in order, especially if you have additional information. Know that we also will have this information that you've presented today and shared today with us for consideration as well.
Those responses can go to the Durham Opening Doors email that was in the communication about the meeting. Please put in the topic line listening session follow-up or something like that, so we know that those responses are pertain to us, as Keisha does get a lot of different kinds of emails to that Durham Opening Door site. Yes, listening session response.
I would like to thank each of you for participating. I'm going to put my cell number in the chat, best way to reach me. I would love to come and learn about your programs. I need a 919 number.
Dr. Battle, this is Keisha. Do you, Sharita, and Ms. Colleen want to do a debrief after this session to just discuss next steps before the 5th?
That would be great if we could.
I agree.
If we can join the Teams meeting we were on this morning, the 9 o'clock meeting, we should still be able to access it there afterwards.
Thank you. Keisha, Miss Keisha,
Yes,
do you know if the content of the chat is part of the transcription?
yes, I'll be sending that as well.
Oh, no, no, I was just asking because I didn't remember. So thank you.
It is transcribed, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Ms. McCullers, can you formally adjourn the meeting, please?
Sure. Thank you all for attending. It has reached the 12 o'clock hour. We look forward to follow up with you all on February the 5th. Take care. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks for holding us space.